نفتتح هذه الجلسة بافتتاح المباركة بقراءة سورة الفاتحة أم القرآن، وإلى حضرة سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Alhamdulillah, Sadatina al-ulama wad-du'ah wa sairi dhuyufil kiram wal hadirin wal hadirat. Yang berbahagia semua para ulama, para pendakwah dan semua tetamu-tamu kehormat, hadirin dan hadirat sekalian. Kita akan menyempurnakan, kita akan mulakan majlis kita, akan diteruskan dengan sesi plenary pagi ini, dan bagi menyempurnakan sesi ini pihak majlis menjemput yang berbahagia Profesor Madya Dr. Wan Suhaimi Wan Abdullah dari CASIS-UTM sebagai moderator sesi ini bagi mendalikannya bersama tetamu-tetamu jemputannya, iaitu saya ulang sekali lagi nama-nama mereka. Tetamu jemputan kehormat kita Prof.Dr. Tatiana Denisova dari UTM, Dr. Alan Abdul Haq Godlas, Dr. Hiroko Koshimoto, dan Prof. Madya Dr. Khalif mungkin belum masuk lagi, insya-Allah akan sampai nanti. ليتم هذه الجلسة plenary ندعو لفضيلة الأستاذ دكتور وان سحيمي وان عبد الله من الجامعة التكنولوجية ماليزيا ليكون رئيسا لهذه الجلسة مع المتكلمين الكرام. فليتفضل مأجورا. Dr. Wan Suhaimi dipersilakan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Terima kasih para pengurusi majlis. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in, amma ba'd. We will begin our second plenary session. It is quite late. I mean, it's almost 2:30 now. We're supposed to start at 2 o'clock. But I will try my best to end this session by 4 or a bit late, so that we will catch the original schedule. I will straightly invite our first speakers. I mean, since we have only one and a half hours now for our session, so perhaps I would like to give the opportunity of like 20 minutes per presentation, so that we have some time for discussion. Now I would like to invite our first speaker, which is Prof.Dr. Tatiana Denisova. She is stated here a Russian scholar, but she always tell us that she is already Malaysian now. Teaching at our Center for Advanced Studies on Islam and Civilization. Her specialization is on Islamic historiography. He read Malay, he read Jawi, he read all our historical and literature's work in Jawi. So without further ado, I would like to invite Professor Tatiana Denisova for her presentation. Falyatafaddal mashkura.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I don't know I will be able to use my PowerPoint or no, but I will try my best. Thank you very much for all our distinguished guests who visit us here in UTM, and we are very happy to share with you some our knowledge about the local history of Islam, and so on. So, of course, Sufism is one of the most significant aspects of the history of Islam in the Malay world. The contribution of Sufis in spiritual and intellectual life of the region is difficult to overestimate. Many spiritual leaders and intellectuals have been known here since very early time. Their names are inscribed in the Malay intellectual heritage. The works of Araniri, Hamzah Suri, and many others devoted to thousands of pages of scientific works. And still many confusions and prejudice regarding the Tasawuf and Sufis in the Malay Indonesian archipelago spread widely in the public opinion as well as among the specialists. Some Western scholars believe that Sufis in the Malay world are some kind of street magicians, similar to shamans and sorcerers from pre-Islamic time. Others believe that Sufism is a special sect in Islam, whose members consider themselves free from performance of traditional religious rules and duties. Nowadays, a negative view towards Sufism and denial of its role in Islam is associated with certain political factors. Therefore, it is so much important to investigate and explain the truth and essence of Sufism and its role in the intellectual development of Malay world. Next, please. The study of Malay Muslim historiography have been traditionally considered to be part of the Oriental studies, known as Malay studies, and this field of knowledge have its own history and its own specific strengths and weakness. On one hand, profound Western scholars have laid the foundation of the modern science of history based on the fundamental methods of studying the historical sources, and that is why Prof. Aliatas emphasized that we have to acknowledge them, and their brilliant contribution evokes due praise. And next, please. And on the other hand, many Orientalists were prone to Eurocentrism, held a biased attitude toward the local population, and reflected negative perception toward Islam, and thus formed misjudgment of this impact of the local history and culture. And that is why Prof. Aliatas continued that we must sincerely acknowledge and affirm what is true in the interpretation of our history, which they have gradually set and equivocably agreed among themselves. One of the misunderstandings spread widely among the Orientalists is the wrong perception regarding the Tasawuf and Sufism in the Malay Indonesian archipelago. According to Winstead, Sufism is no more than transformed magical practice of Hinduism. He wrote, former Hindus of seclusion for certain days of the week or for a period, the magician now claim an Arabic name Halwat, an Islamic sanction. If he remained celibate or if he fasted just to impress his clients or to enable himself to see visions, he was no longer a Hindu ascetic, but the disciple of the crude Sufism, also derived from India. Originally, to become a shaman, he had kept vigil beside an open grave or waited in the dark forest for the coming of the tiger familiar. He would now sit fasting and shrouded to hear the praise for the dead read over him, and would repeat the name of Allah 5,000 times until hysteria brought nightmare vision of tiger or serpent, to be succeeded by visions of angel and saints instructing him in his mystic knowledge. That is how the Orientalists, especially in the beginning of 20th century, understand and feeling about the local tradition of Tasawuf. The teaching of his shaman and Shaiva forerunners made it natural for the Malays to accept the Sufi doctrine that as a disciple must honor and obey his master and pass through several stages of the initiation. Muslim amulets and Sufi mysticism succeeded naturally to the talismans and ascetic practice of Hindu, and those talisman and practices to fetish and shamanism of primitive days. This kind of point of view is quite popular until now, even in scientific writing, so-called scientific writing. Winston masterly described the system of so-called folk's magic, but he did not realize the crucial conceptual difference between the street magician and the Sufis. According to him, Islam did not change the native beliefs in spirits. Islam not only related the spirits and gods, according to him, of older faiths, but introduced the Malay to Iblis, an evil with whom his magic had never before had the chance of dealing. That is only what he see in the Islamization of the Malay-Indonesian archipelago. Winston, in his notion of Sufis, next please, yeah? Next please. Okay. Winston, in his notion of Sufis, focused on some technical aspects and some practical aspects of rituals, such as amulets, jampi, described their intercourse with ghosts and jinns, medical practices, primitive astrology, and other adat elements. There is no one reference to the Sufi philosophy and metaphysics, to the great local intellectuals and scholars, to the famous kitabs on Tasawuf and Islamic thought, as if all of this never existed in the Malay tradition of Islamic mysticism. He describes Sufis as some kind of low-class, uneducated disciples, as sociopaths with antisocial behavior, who could be comparable with the shamans or bomos of the pre-Islamic time. Their belief and the practices represent actually so-called folk religion with its syncretic in its nature and not the real classical Islam. And in this case, Vincent probably was right to declare that this kind of religion and beliefs had been brought from India by Indian traders and vagabond magicians. Vincent's sentences above could be accepted as a suitable and quite exact description of the pagan system of tradition and belief, and that is precisely from what Islam liberated the humankind. Alatas wrote, Islamization is the liberation of man from first from magical, mythological, animistic, national, cultural tradition opposed to Islam, and then from secular control over his reason and his language. The man of Islam is he whose reason and language are no longer controlled by magic, mythology, animism against to Islam and secularism. He is liberated from both their own national and cultural traditions, oppose magical and the secular worldviews. The issue with proper identification of the Sufis and their contribution to the Malay history, the next, please, to the Malay history as well to the whole Islamic intellectual tradition is actually not new. Already in 17th century, Ar-Raniri, one of the greatest local scholar and teacher, emphasized that in his book Hujjat al-Siddiq that Sufis could be divided into three groups: the proper Sufis, the aspirant of these Sufis, and so-called pseudo-Sufis, who only make outward show in imitation of the Sufis to conceal personal motives and worldly ambitions. According to Ar-Raniri, pseudo-Sufis, they are the people who distinguish their inwarded evil with the show of outward piety. Their rejection of religious law embodying God's command and prohibition and their claim to being exempt from such law. Their repudiation of prayer and their contention that contemplation alone is sufficient instead. their communism pertaining to women and property resembling, their encouragement to licentious behavior of music and of using songs and thus in their rituals. They claim that signs are more excellent than prophets in the spiritual hierarchy. They pretend at falling into trances during which they imagine having intercourse with some dark-eyed whores, and or how it was mentioned above, with some animistic spirits or creatures. Their agnosticism and materialism, their belief in incarnation, reincarnation, and the transmigration of souls, their emulation of laziness as a way of life, encouraging begging, their assertion of the Holy Al-Quran is a veil to the concealing the truth, resulting in their neglect to reading it, and so on. Comparing these two, comparing the two descriptions above, Raniri and Winstead, it's become clear that actually they both talk about so-called pseudo-Sufis, kaum yang bersufi Sufi dirinya. It means in 17th century already, Malay Muslim scholars have already identified problem of misunderstanding regarding the definition of Tasawuf and Sufi. That is why Raniri specifically explained the differences between the true and pseudo-Sufis to highlight the crucial distance between pre-Islamic magic and Islamic metaphysics. But still, until now, the confusion is still going on. Just one sentence from contemporary book written by one of quite famous scholar here. The Sufis and also other early propagators of Islam in this area brought with them popular beliefs which, properly speaking, stand outside the strict teaching of Islam. The spread of Islam brought with it magical beliefs and practices popular among the Persian and Indian Muslims. Actually, the meaning is the same. So how we can know who is right, who is not? The best way to ask the people who knows, keeper of trust, or to refer to the history. And Malay historical tradition contained a lot of information about many different aspects of life, and including life, intellectual life, including Tasawuf and Sufism in Malay Indonesian archipelago. Next, please. So we choose only 3 texts, Sejarah Melayu, Hikayat Aceh, and Tuhfatan Nafis. And information which one could be interesting for us, we can divide into few groups: personalities, tariqat, writing kitabs, and didactic instruction. Of course, this is huge information. And for this short presentation, which one's supposed to be less than 20 minutes, I will just mention a few things. Who are the Sufis mentioned in the Malay historical text, which tariqats is mentioned here, which book, and what kind of social status and function have Sufis according to the old Malay text. Next one. Here you can see a lot of names mentioned in all Malay texts, among them Sheikh Abdul Ghaffur, Imam Ghazali, Sheikh Makhdoom, Sheikh Mushafi, Al-Banjari, and so on, Sheikh Shamsuddin Pasei, Sheikh Ibrahim, and so on. The information shows that all these scholars are great scholars of Islam. The information showed that all these scholars have very high social status. They give advice to king and royalty and his kids. They help Sultan in his official meeting. He helped him to achieve solution in debates and conflicts. They representing king in official visits in other countries, and so on. Among the tariqats mentioned in old Malay text, Qadariya, Naqshbandiya, Shatariya, Halwatia, Samania, Rifaiya, Muhammadiyah, and some others. Among members of these influential tarikats were not only ulama, Sayyids, sheikhs, murshids, and so on, but also high-ranking officials, members of royal families, as well as sultans and vice rulers themselves. The membership in the Tasawuf brotherhood, deep knowledge of metaphysics, execution of Sufi rituals, and awareness of Tasawuf treatises were considered in the Malay Muslim society as a mandatory qualities in the ideal ruler, Raja Adil. Next, please. That is how, for those who knows Malay, Raja Ali Haji described the proper rulers. The social status and the authority of the proper Sufis, ulamas and sheikhs was very high. They represented the intellectual elite of society. All the doors of the best houses were open for them. Even rulers and their families treated them as mentors and advisors. And it is obvious that they did not have and could not have anything in common with magicians and sorcerers of pre-Islamic times. That is, next please, that is just one report from Tuhfat al-Nafis about visit on one high-level Sufi to Riau, Sheikh Ismail. And this text, next please. And this text show how Raja Ismail come to Riau, and how Vice King himself come to take him, pick up him, to take to Riau, and how they perform prayer together, and how they talk together, and how all these royalties come to ask questions about religion and Tasawuf practice, and how they perform zikr together, and so on. Regarding the books, it's a lot of books mentioned in the Malay historical text. This is just few of them. I will not read it just to cut off the time a little bit. And this is very different books. And also, next please. And is very important part of the information about pseudo-Sufism and some errors in the practicing of Sufism. For example, Raja Ali Haji mentioned about one of the official young Dipertuan vice king, Muhammad Ali, who was practicing zikr, membaca isim, in the state of mental disorder and without proper guidance, and finally he lost his mind. And very interesting that the Virginia Matheson, who translate this part, this text to the English, she actually, with all her knowledge, she misunderstand the meaning of this term, membaca isim, zikr. She just translated, she recited prayer, he recited prayer for 2 or 3 days, and after that he become mentally ill, as if it is to perform praise as something unusual for Muslims. This is a matter of misunderstanding and translation, isn't it? And on the end of my presentation, I would also give you one very interesting story. The Tuhfat al-Nafis described also very interesting story about one Libai, means some kind of cleric who, based on Araniri classification, could be identified as a pseudo-Sufi. The storyteller said it was while His Majesty Sultan Mahmud was ruling in Linga and Vice King Raja Jafar was in Riau. Libai called Tamat came to Linga. He professed to be knowledgeable in the mysticism, and it is said instructed the people and Libai of Linga in his knowledge, which it said he called Isi, Batin. Much of what he said was wrong. In the end, it became heretical, and he proclaimed his name Allah Most High. Many of his students followed his belief, and daily people thronged him, and some saying he was a holy man. He taught words for the necessary ablution, required relieving oneself, and for purification, which came from the heavenly bird called Shahran or Sarahan, which would cleanse impurity and so on. When he had to travel by boat, he was rowed by his student, who charged aloft of his is merciful of Allah, and the situation grew serious. Finally, the wise king became mad on him, and he and his followers were reprimanded and had their heads shaved as a sign of social dishonor. But Libai Tamat escaped from Linga, and later on he claimed to be a reincarnation of the spirit of Raja Ali, a martyr of the sake of Allah. He managed to confuse and mislead a lot of people, including Raja Idlis, the brother of the wise king. With his help, he got what he wanted, the wealth and power. Finally, he was put to death and his head cut off and sent to Linga to Sultan Mahmud. That was the end of the Libai Tamat. From this story, we can identify Libai Tamat as some kind of magician or pseudo-Sufi whose attitude and activity is similar with what Araniri wrote. He proclaimed himself as a god. He rejected common religious rule and regulation. He created some kind of freak messenger between God and people, this bird, yeah? He proclaimed to be reincarnated by the spirit of the other person, and what is the most important also, he seems to be very practical and materialistic. He was looking for power and wealth, not for zuhud and purification. Yeah, and the same hero, the same characteristic actually similar to those whom was described Winstead. The analysis proves that there were a lot of proper Sufis in the Malay Muslim history. The outstanding intellectuals and spiritual leaders who had nothing to do with the street magician and sorcerers from the pre-Islamic part. Probably one must be absolutely blind to confuse or liken them to each other. As a conclusion, I wanna just jump to the last my slide and refer to Prof.Dr.'s citation about the role of Tasawuf and in the Islamization of the Malay world. Islam came to archipelago coach in Sufi metaphysics. It was through Tasawuf that the high intellectual and rationalistic religious spirit entered the receptive minds of the people, affecting the rise of the rationalism and intellectualism, not manifested in the pre-Islamic time. The emergence of rationalism and intellectualism can be viewed as the powerful spirit that set in motion the process of revolutionizing the Malay Indonesian worldview, turning it away from the crumbling world of mythology to the world of intelligent reason and order. Sufi metaphysics did not come to harmonize Islam with traditional beliefs grounded in the Hindu-Buddhist beliefs and other autochthonous tradition. It came to clarify the difference between Islam and what they had known in the past. The textual analysis of these just three masterpieces of the Malay Muslim historiography from 16th to 19th centuries prove the validity of Prof.Dr.'s conclusion. Thank you very much.